Joining us here at our presentation at the Phoenixville Library. We are speaking tonight on taking charge of your health care with legal documents. Our presenters tonight are Jim Ruggiero, Managing Partner of Ruggiero Law Offices in Paoli, and Marcia Clarke-Ford, the Community Liaison with Grain Hospice. So you'll be learning tonight a little bit about HIPAA releases, healthcare powers of attorneys, living wills, and the care you might need as your health changes. So I hope you enjoy the presentation.
Good evening. Good evening. Try that again. Hey, you're editing this, right? Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Ruggiero. Thanks for coming out to the community education tonight, and we thank the Phoenixville Library for letting us talk to the community members. So we're going to talk tonight about healthcare and how planning is important for us because we're all able to take charge of our healthcare using the right documents. And so we're going to talk about some of those documents. We're going to talk about different healthcare things that we should know about through our friends here. Marcia will talk about hospice and palliative care. So these are important things to know before you need to know them. And I say that from the perspective of it's always good to have advanced knowledge. You want to do planning before a crisis erupts. If you've had experience with loved ones and having to make decisions at end of life or decisions when someone's incapacitated, I've been there with family members in hospice over the years. So when I'm talking about a lot of this, it's not just as a lawyer, it's as a son, and it's as a cousin, it's as an uncle, a father, someone who has been the agent on a large number of trusted friends and families' healthcare powers of attorney, having had to make those decisions in the past because I was the court-appointed guardian for an incapacitated person when I was 29. That was quite some time ago. So my first, time at the helm, I was pretty young. And, I've had to do it a number of times over the last couple decades. So we've been around since 1990, got our firm, and got several folks on staff and lawyers, paralegals, assistants, all folks who help with us serving the community through what we do is estate planning, estate administration, elder law, business law, and real estate. Our offices are in Paoli by the hospital, and we have one in Center Valley between Allentown and Buffalo. So I want to talk about fundamentals. So planning is important, and when we talk about what planning documents should everyone have, this is a list. All Pennsylvania residents, 18 to 108 years of age, $10 to $10 million. It's not about money, it's about putting the tools in the toolkit. So, when we talk about today, I like to break it down with these simple discussion of these documents, the today documents versus the tomorrow documents. The today documents are, if something happens to me today, who's going to be able to help me because I'm incapacitated? Do I have a HIPAA release in place so that my daughter can call from across, the country to see how I'm doing if I'm in the hospital? If I'm incapacitated, do I have a durable healthcare power of attorney in place? That's a limited durable power of attorney. It's limited to just healthcare, which is very important. And then we have a general durable power of attorney that covers legal, financial, tax, life problems. You designate an agent to make decisions when you can't make them for yourself. A living will. Living will and durable healthcare power of attorney are what we call advanced directives. These are advanced healthcare directives. You put them in place in advance before you need them. So you have the time to think and make some decisions based on what your personal beliefs are, what your goals are, and how you want to be treated when you can't speak anymore for yourself. So it's a chance to put things in writing. So these are what I call the today documents. If I step off that curb today and get hit by that SEPTA bus and I'm in the hospital on a ventilator, I can't communicate my wishes to the doctor. So I have to designate an agent to be that person. And in this case, it's my wife Beth here, who is my agent. Then we have not only our spouse, who's generally the first agent in charge, but then we look at alternates and talk about who's the best person for the job. Best person to be a healthcare agent might not be the best person to be an agent under a financial power of attorney. You have a child that is involved in the medical system, healthcare, knows the ins and outs, knows what questions to ask. That's why I want to be my healthcare agent. My daughter is pre-med. God bless her. She wants to be a doctor. She's a healer, okay? She's going to be my healthcare agent after my wife, not my son, all right? And I love my son, and he's great. He will be a great agent to work with his sister under a general durable power of attorney. By the way, we're talking about a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, so we sure hope that, you know, there's no need for them to have to do anything for either one of us anytime soon. But tomorrow, one of these tomorrows, sorry, we're all going to die. We have a 100% probability that we're all going to die. Okay? That's a guarantee. I can guarantee that. Okay? This is the tough part where I talk about death, I talk about taxes. It's not easy. But your last will and testament is your tomorrow document. That's a written set of instructions. What happens to my stuff after I die? How do I leave my loving legacy to my family? All right, well, you can write some of that down in your last will and testament. I submit to you, if you've got family, you've already given them your loving legacy, you've raised them, you've given them fishing rods, you've put them out into the world, you've paid for college, you've done all the things that parents do, you've given them an education. So hopefully that comes back when you need help today or tomorrow. So what is HIPAA? HIPAA is a long acronym. It stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. However, we've got HIPAA 1, we've got HIPAA 2, we now even have a third version as the world has changed. And I can just say, you might think I'm old, you might think I'm young, but when I started practicing law, we didn't have fax machines, all right, let alone email. So my mother was a legal secretary for over 40 years. The best thing that she told me ever happened in her life was an IBM Selectric with self-correcting tape. Okay? And we still have a typewriter in our office, all right? Because now we can figure out how to use a label maker. So, this acronym is designed to keep your protected health information private. So, if you understand that we've got these various federal laws that limit the world's access to your medical records, you have to understand that applies to your family. So I always say that medical information from doctors and hospitals generally seems to be free-flowing to family members until it's not. Now what do I mean by that? When there's a problem on their side, all of a sudden the curtain can come down. And that's not a good thing. So just as a general proposition, you want to have your daughter in California be able to call the floor if you're admitted for an emergency and they keep you overnight, something like that. Under HIPAA, they shouldn't be able to tell her or, you know, son what's going on. So it's designed, when we do a HIPAA release for a client, it doesn't get triggered by incapacity. It just says, this is my HIPAA release, these are the people that I designate to receive my protected health information, and why is that important? So my parents used to have Dr. Day. It was Monday. So on Mondays would be, throughout the month, the GP, the endocrinologist, the cardiologist, the podiatrist, you name it, all the different doctors that we have in the world today as their health, you know, changed over the years. But to have someone else in the room, such as an adult child, they needed to give permission. They signed a HIPAA release. So if you want that second set of ears in the room with you, you have a HIPAA release executed for that adult child to be there, or that spouse, so that they can get information and then transfer it out to people that need it. I'd ask my dad, how's the doctor's dad? Fine. And the answer was always fine, no matter what doctor he went to, whenever he went. So then when he actually went in and talked to the doctor, and they went over the list of symptoms and a list of, oh, these are the meds you're supposed to be taking, when you're supposed to be taking them, and supposed to how you take care of yourself, you get a little bit of different information. So why is it important? Again, I've already talked about some of this. If you're ill, can your daughter-in-law contact the doctor to get to see the patient chart to monitor your care? So it can be your daughter-in-law, not just your son who's too busy with work to go take mom or dad, but you've got a daughter-in-law who's more than willing. So if you are a trustee in some document, or a successor trustee, What if you need to take the place of your parent who's no longer able to do the job because of some diminished capacity, because they've got a respiratory failure, or if you've got a practice and your partner's disabled? You know, how could we get a letter showing that he's disabled? So a HIPAA release is you giving the ability for your family members to have your protected healthcare information so that it can be released to them so that they can have information and knowledge about your healthcare situation. So knowledge is power. Absent the knowledge, they can't make good decisions to give you good advice. So, a durable power of attorney.
You can take questions at the end.
We're going to take questions at the end. Okay. So please write on your notes that we've given you, and we'll be happy to address them at the end. So, a durable healthcare power of attorney is a springing power of attorney. What does that mean? It only springs into effect when you become disabled and can no longer communicate decisions on your own to your doctor. Who determines if you're incapacitated? It's your doctor. It's not your child. All right? It's not your sibling. It's a medical decision. Your doctor will say the patient can no longer give me their input on making medical decisions. Therefore, due to the incapacity, I need to know, the doctor needs to know who's the agent in charge, who can make decisions when they're incapacitated. So when you have a durable healthcare power of attorney in place, you got a primary agent, and that agent can act on your behalf with regards to healthcare matters. If they're unavailable, you can have an alternate. If they're unavailable, you can have a second alternate. The important thing to understand is you designate an agent in advance, so that who do you trust to make healthcare decisions? I'm going to use a lot of terms interchangeably. You're going to hear the term agent all the time. For me tonight, make agent equal advocate. If you can do one thing, when I say agent, you have to understand the person you designate to be your agent has to be able to be an advocate for you, no matter what power of attorney they would be acting under, whether it's a healthcare power of attorney or a general durable power of attorney. An agent steps into the shoes of the principal and makes decisions based on what the principal needs, what benefits the principal. It's not the agent's choice on what they think should happen. It's what do they think the principal would do. You who execute a power of attorney and name an agent, you're called the principal, okay? So, what role can a healthcare agent do on your behalf? You can obtain your medical information. It can talk with the medical team about different treatment choices and options. It can ask for consultations. And more importantly, as an advocate, get second opinions from other doctors. There's always more than one way to treat a diagnosis. We know this. So your agent can consent to tests, but they can also refuse tests or treatments if they think that it's not necessary, okay, because you trust their judgment. Importantly, you can decide whether to transfer the patient to another doctor or another healthcare facility, move to a different hospital, move to a different skilled facility for rehab. If they don't like how the rehab's going, if they don't like the course of treatment. Certain hospitals specialize in taking care of certain diseases and illnesses better than other hospitals. So you have to understand that, if I needed a, triple bypass tomorrow, which I don't, by the way, and I have a regular doctor that I see on this annually, I don't want to go to Penn or Jefferson because they do thousands of them every year, okay? I don't want to go next door to Phoenixville. Not that there's anything wrong with Phoenixville, because there's nothing wrong with it, but I want to go where they have the most experienced pilots piloting the plane. So, you got a Fox Chase for cancer as an example, as one of the specialty places. So you might not want to be treated locally, you might want to go into the city. Preventive medicine works really well out here in the suburbs, and all these are Jim's opinions, my opinion. But when I need some acute care, trauma, where do they get flown into? The city. Where do they take you to? The teaching hospitals, where they see thousands of people. So, living will. What is this? You hear about it all the time. It's not a great title. I didn't come up with it. In my retirement, I'm going to think of a different title. Because, it's about when you're dying. A living will is a written set of instructions designed to be put in place and acted upon when you essentially have less than 6 months to live. You're dying, and they can't cure you. Again, you get to determine what treatment you want in your life. And we'll talk about that as we go along this. You can accept and reject medical treatment at any time. You don't have to do anything. You can do everything. You can do something in between. And we're talking about different levels of choices. You're going to see that as the discussion unfolds tonight. So, if you're suffering from an incurable and terminal illness, you're in a persistent vegetative state, and again, or you've got less than 6 months to live because you're in late stage cancer, you can designate an individual to be your advocate, to inform your healthcare provider of your wishes regarding end-of-life treatment. It's not, a living will doesn't cover what happens when I'm in a car crash. I get that question all the time. It's never about don't heal me, don't cure me. It's I'm at the end of the life span that God has chosen for me. I have this very narrow set of circumstances that apply. So therefore, you can't heal me, you can't cure me. So I want to be treated in the following manner. So you get to write that down before that time happens. So with Pennsylvania forms with regards to healthcare powers of attorney, we have a very lengthy Pennsylvania statutory form that I utilize with my clients so that doctors and hospitals are familiar with it. You might hear of different types of healthcare directives. Some of you might have, anybody heard of the 7 wishes? Okay, so it's just a different way to talk about how you want to be treated at the end of life. But you can elect whether or not you want tube feeding at the end of your life. Elect whether or not you want to be an organ donor. Specify who would be the recipient of any organs, okay? So, while it seems like a long time ago, the law in Pennsylvania was updated in 2006 and the forms have changed. I have many clients who have healthcare directives from before 2006. They may have a living will, but they don't have a limited durable power of attorney for healthcare. So it's important to understand the distinction, and there is a distinction and a difference between a healthcare power of attorney and a living will. There's many ways we can become incapacitated. That doesn't mean we're at the end of our life. It means we need an advocate to make healthcare decisions on our behalf. Importantly, if I'm at the end of my life, I've decided I don't want the dying process to be wild. I want to tame it. I don't want to artificially prolong the dying process. I don't want to have $1 million bill for the last 2 weeks of my life because they put me in the ICU. Then they moved me to the CCU. And then they finally realized that I wasn't going to recover. And then they withdrew me from life support. I don't want to end up that way. And, you know, 2 Father's Day weekends ago, I was just sitting in my office and I got a phone call, and it was from a client who I'd known since kindergarten, because that's how long, you know, I have some of my relationships. Her brother was next door at Paley Hospital, and I played Little League baseball with him. I played, you know, football with him. We went to grade school together. Used to see each other at the gym, you know, not as frequently as we should, but my age. He was next door. He was on a ventilator, and she was in tears. He wasn't married, had no children, only had left. It was his sister who was his healthcare agent. I walked next door with the documents. I went up to Keith's room, and I saw Keith on a ventilator. And if you've ever seen it, you know when someone's no longer there. So he was there on a ventilator, but he was gone. And I talked to the doctor. I said, "Why is he on the vent?" "Well, we didn't know what to do. He was septic. He came in Thursday. He's non-responsive. He stopped breathing. We intubated him. And he had a series of heart attacks from a couple of years prior, and he had never gotten better." So what happens if you take him off the vent? Well, he'll die in 10 minutes. Well, you know, his healthcare power, if he's at the end of his life, he doesn't want to be intubated. He doesn't want to be on the vent. So these are the things that, you know, if the document was there, because, you know, on Thursday rather than show up on Saturday, they wouldn't have put him on the vent. And I said from perspective of his sister was left with this difficult task to carry out the terms of his living will. So it was the doctor's first day on the job, by the way, so you never forget certain things. She did not withdraw the vent at that particular moment in time because she just couldn't do it. But we discussed the terms of his living will with the doctor and the staff, and said that if something else happens, another intervening and subsequent healthcare event, that they weren't to do anything further with regards to treatment. And I say that because it's important to understand that later that night he had a heart attack. And he died that night. Which is, you know, what was ultimately going to happen. So it, in this case, happened sooner rather than later because they followed the terms of living. Okay, so when that heart attack occurred, they didn't revive him. So you have to understand, living wills are written instructions that say, if this event occurs, here's how I want to be treated. You have to be comfortable with it. So there are other helpful documents that aren't legal documents, but they are actually medical orders, medical directives that not a lot of doctors do a great job of telling their patient families about. And that's my opinion. I think there should be more knowledge about out-of-hospital medical directives. So you're able to get a medical directive that's called an out-of-hospital do not resuscitate order. They are available in Pennsylvania as well as other states, and they're for seriously ill individuals who are living outside of a hospital in their community and they don't want resuscitation by an EMS if they stop breathing or if their heart stops. It's a choice. You can refuse medical care at any time and in any manner. So you can get a medical order called an out-of-hospital DNR. So you can request this out-of-hospital DNR. You can wear a bracelet that shows those EMTs have got this in place, do not revive you. And if you're 95 years old and you're at the end of your life and you've got end-stage cancer, you don't want to be revived, okay? So this is a sample of what a Pennsylvania out-of-hospital do not resuscitate order looks like. It's prepared not by a lawyer, but by your attending physician. And again, it's a narrow set of circumstances, but it's a good tool to have in place when it's appropriate. Everything that I discuss has to be appropriate for an individual. When I make some broad generalizations, just be advised, it's different for every person. Okay, everything can be customized. So here's a bracelet, okay, here's a card. You see some people actually have tattoos, but you can let the world know that you don't want to be resuscitated. You've got your attending physician's name there and a signature. So, if it's appropriate, you can put it in place. So we also have something called a POLST. And in other states, it stands for Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. In Pennsylvania, because we're PA, it's called Pennsylvania Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. Hey, we're pretty sharp, aren't we? So, it expands the out-of-hospital DNR order. It gives additional treatment options if something happens, not just do not resuscitate. All right? It can also say, give me this level of medical care, okay? And you can say, keep me comfortable and pain-free, all right? Give me aggressive care. Give me minimal care, all right? And also, do not resuscitate. So it has to be bright pink, which we call on salmon-colored stock. When it's in your room and an assisted living or skilled nursing facility, it's supposed to be above your bed, and it has to be a certain color. That's Pennsylvania law, all right? So any healthcare professional coming in the room can see it and see what it says and draws your attention to it, okay? The DNR is flat, don't do anything. A POLST is tailored to that individual specific circumstances. So it's kind of hard to read the small print, but it says you can attempt CPR or don't attempt CPR. Part A. Part B, medical interventions, comfort measures only. It says don't transfer to the hospital for life-sustaining treatment. Keep me comfortable in my bed. Limited additional interventions, put me on a cardiac monitor, but don't intubate me, all right? And transfer to a hospital. Full treatment. Do all the care of the above. Use intubation. Use advanced airway interventions, ventilation, and cardio care. And then transfer to a hospital. So you can choose the level of care, whether you want antibiotics, whether you want nutrition or hydration medically supplied. What are your goals? Who are they discussed with? And a doctor's signs at the bottom. There's a Pennsylvania form from the Department of Health. Okay? So, how do we help our clients with their legal documents? We help you with your estate planning for your health care, helping you get those HIPAAs, those healthcare powers of attorney, living wills in place. We also put together caregiver agreements. These are important to understand. When you're a caregiver, 40% of the time, caregivers pass the head of the people they're caring for. And when you're a caregiver, the average age of caregivers is 55. 65% of caregivers are women versus men. And there are millions of dollars lost every year by the caregivers who sacrifice their time to care for their loved ones. They're not working, they're not funding their retirement, they're not growing their savings because they're giving love for free. And it's important. You would do it without payment, but when we talk about a caregiver agreement, it's a way to transfer money to the caregiver that they deserve, because you have to pay someone else to do it. When you go into a skilled nursing facility, you've got to spend all your money down to pay the nursing home. If you can pay a caregiver to keep you at home for many more years, and have a better quality of life, doesn't it make sense to transfer the money to the family to have care that's going to keep you where you want to be? No one ever wants to go to a skilled nursing facility, ever. Okay, you don't want to be a resident there. You don't want to visit. It is the way it is. And there's a lot of good places that provide a lot of good treatment, but you're there out of necessity because you need 24/7 care, because you can't live at home, you can't live in your apartment, you can't live in your assisted living facility any longer because the level of care required is so great. So, if you don't have any planning done, then the only option is a guardianship. And what do I mean by that? I had a woman call from Lake George this summer. They spent 6 months in Westchester and 6 months on Lake George. Her mom fell and is now in a nursing home in New York. Mom's 94. Her daughter's in her 70s. Mom didn't get around to doing any planning because, just wasn't time yet. She wasn't that old. She was real healthy. No, you're not. So mom has no power of attorney in place. And mom is someone who needs to be in skilled care now, and her daughter can't do the things that she would ordinarily want to do to help mom qualify for admittance into the skilled facility and spend down the resources in an intelligent fashion. She can't access the money because she doesn't have a power of attorney. The only way she's going to be able to access the money, sell a house, do whatever needs to be done, take distributions out of a retirement account to help pay for the care, is going to court and filing a petition with the Orphans Court in Chester County, because that's where she lives. It'll be in Westchester, it'll be in front of an Orphans Court judge. It's a process. You file a petition, the judge will appoint an attorney to represent mom. There will be expert medical testimony that must be presented to his or her honor at the hearing. Mom or dad may or may not have to attend the hearing based on the level of incapacity that they have. That's up to the doctor. And lots of times a fight could break out among siblings. Who's best to take care of mom and dad? Not does mom need a guardianship or dad need a guardianship. Sometimes that is an issue as well, by the way. It all depends on how much money is involved. Greed is a horrible thing, and the bigger the dollars and cents that people fight over, the bigger the fight in court. You never see anybody fight over who's going to be guardian when someone doesn't have any money. It's been my experience. Because, there's nothing in it other than it's what you do out of love for your parents. Okay? So, we're all going to die. We're going to have that tomorrow document, so we're going to need a state administration. So, these are just things that, we counsel our clients on how to reduce the stress associated with the planning for all these things, how to reduce the costs associated with the toll tax. But also, putting the legal documents in place, once they're there, these are tools in the toolbox. In the event of an emergency, you pull a tool out of the toolbox. You need a tool, you use it. But if you don't have good professional service providers, such as someone who understands hospice and what palliative care is and is able to help you through that process and determining, is it the right time to put hospice in place, and what does hospice truly mean? All right, you want to know how this works beforehand, not when the crisis breaks out. You want to understand what is palliative care. We all have the right to be comfortable, to be pain-free. And as caregivers, we have the right to not be totally stressed out taking care of a loved one. So having that loved one have these documents in place is really important. And by the way, remember I said caregivers die 40% of the time ahead of the people they're taking care of? Caregivers need all these documents too. Everybody needs these. I started out with 18 to 108. That's the age bracket of people I've done this planning for. So, education is important. We have a monthly caregiver support group that we started a couple months ago for the community so that people can get an education from their peers. People who are out there living it and who might be further along in the journey. So at this point, we're going to turn it over to Marcia. All right?
Thank you,
And then,
Jim.
thank you very much. And we'll take questions to both of us when she's done. We'll come back. Okay?
Again, my name is Marcia Clarke-Ford. I'm from Grain Hospice. We're a family-owned company outside of Phoenixville, but in King of Prussia. Family-owned and operated. We've been there for some years, about 5 years now. Majority of our business is in Western Pennsylvania, York, Altoona, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg area. What is hospice? Everything Jim spoke about earlier today with advanced directives, DNRs, pulses, they are all information that ties in when a loved one is at a place where they've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, where they're given a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. That's when some people start to consider hospice for their loved ones. The misconception of hospice is that it's a place. Hospice is not a place. Hospice is something that you want to take into consideration when your loved one is at end of life. This is something that we consider a place where you want to show emotional and spiritual needs. What does that mean? That means that if you know that you've been given a prognosis and you want comfort measures, that's when you want hospice. We don't look at hospice as we're dying. Hospice is we're gonna live before we die. This is when you can determine your last wishes and how you wanna live before you go to your next place. One great thing about hospice is that it doesn't center around the disease. Yes, you've been given a prognosis. Yes, you've been told, you know what, this might be 6 months, it might be less. We factor around the individual, the patient's needs, the family needs. That's where the spiritual, emotional support comes in. So we talked about how hospice serves the patients with the terminal illness that has been given a life expectancy. So what we do as a hospice provider, we provide a nurse that goes to the individual. So we meet the patients where they are. So if you're in a long-term care facility, we would meet you there. If you're in your home, we're gonna meet you there. If you're living at your beach house and you want somebody to come and take care of you at the beach house and that's your last wish, that's where we will meet you. Absolutely. So what we provide is we provide services to the members and their loved ones. We give them comprehensive care where they are comfortable. Jim also talked about a DNR. You pick up any DNR and it says do not resuscitate. If I'm at a place and I don't want to go to the hospital, that's when hospice comes in, because when you're on hospice, that's when you've given up aggressive treatment. That's when you want comfort measures only. Great thing about hospice, also covered. Medicare covers it with practically no out-of-pocket to the member or the family members. A lot of private insurance also covers it as well. If you're not at a place where you're eligible for Medicare, but you do have private insurance, there's a place carved out in your policy that has hospice palliative care benefits. Now, there is a difference between palliative care and hospice care. So we talked about hospice. We talked about how you've been given a prognosis where you have 6 months to live and you don't want aggressive treatment. The opposite is palliative care. You've been given a diagnosis, but you want comfort measures along with your treatment. That's when you want to consider palliative care. We talked about the treatments of hospice care versus the treatments of palliative care, where you can still go to your doctor, you can still go to physical therapy, you can still get speech and occupational therapy if that's something what you want. In hospice, typically those services are not covered because Medicare gives it in one lump. Medicare says in this treatment you'll be getting this, that, and this. They're going to stop the aggressive treatment and give you comfort measures. Another thing about palliative care is typically happens in the hospital, where when we talked about hospice can take place at anywhere in your home. There are some centers that have hospice in the facilities where you can get treatment there, but majority of the patients want to be in the comfort of their own home if they've been given the opportunity to choose. Okay. So now we want to turn it back to Beth, and she's going to wrap it up, and then we can start asking questions. Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us tonight. I hope we've inspired you to take care of your health to get your legal documents in place in advance, but also to know that there are services to help you along your health journey. Thank you again. Our presenters tonight were Giro Law Offices and Grain Hospice. And thanks again to the Phoenixville Library.